back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping It Sports with M3.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey, man, this time we're gonna do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rosansky. Coming to you from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. It's time for Keeping It Sports with M3, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Good afternoon, everyone. I am, of course, Mike M3 Rosansky, coming to you here on this Monday, the 6th day of March in 2023. Hope you all had a great week. Hope you all had a very relaxing, safe, fun weekend. You know, a weekend and a week that, let's be honest with ourselves here, the sports world did not take much of a break. The sports world, always something going on, always just like what old professional wrestler Roddy Piper used to say, just when we think we all have all the answers, they change all of the questions. Because they seemingly have no chill, no break, no stoppage time. And just when I think I'm going to come in here talking about one thing, they change up my lead story just like that. I thought I was going to come in today with the NBA being the number one thing on my mind, with the Lakers being without LeBron, the hot run by the Knicks here, the nonsense going on with Morant. But once again, the NFL decides to take their foot and push the NBA to the side for a little bit, because we are 1 week away from the NFL's off season getting started in earnest. We are 1 week away from today beginning the legalized tampering period in the NFL, where you can talk to free agents, but nothing can become official as far as trades and signings until 4 o'clock on Wednesday, March the 15th. And you would figure with us getting so close to that date, that movement's going to start happening, especially with, as well, tomorrow being another very important date on the calendar, with it being the deadline for teams to place the franchise tag on their free agents, whether that be the exclusive tag or the non-exclusive tag. And we'll get back to that in a minute. But here I thought that, this would be a topic that I touch on and continue to speculate. But speculation is over. Now it's time, if you're a Jet fan like myself, you're sitting on your hands waiting and wondering. Because going into this weekend, the number one target had been and has been Aaron Rodgers. And you felt that you had Derek Carr in your back pocket as that strong option too, that strong backup plan. Especially when you see Jeremy Fowler of ESPN come out with the report over the weekend saying that while the Panthers and Saints had remained in conversation with Carr, he was slightly leaning toward the New York Jets, even met with them a second time last week at the Combine with Joe Douglas and company, even met with owner Woody Johnson. Well, all of that is out the window. All of that option is completely off the table for the New York Jets, because this morning, as I was driving in here, Derek Carr has decided to sign a 4-year deal with the New Orleans Saints. And I give this guy credit. I give him credit for the fact that, let's face it felt like he played the Jets like a fiddle. He played them right into his hand to get the strongest deal possible for the New Orleans Saints. Now, I don't have the numbers in front of me just yet as far as the type of contract that Derek Carr is getting, but we do know it is a 4-year deal. You figure that there's going to be $100+ million in guarantees here. And it's good for him because, hey, he's not sitting around waiting. He didn't, remember, of all of these guys, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, Daniel Jones, all of these guys are either free agents or that could be traded. He did not have to wait till March 15th. He was cut by his team. He could sign as a free agent at any point that he wanted to. And he was not going to wait around for the Jets anymore, who clearly their number one option and their only option, it seems, is Aaron Rodgers. It's this waiting game, waiting on Aaron Rodgers to make a decision. And you see all the reports, whether it be from Adam Schefter or Jeremy Fowler or from Ian Rappaport over the weekend. And the impression that you come away with is he will either be the New York Jets quarterback next year or he will retire from the NFL. And the fact that retirement is a real option here has me scared to death. Because this whole time, even if he retired, you had Derek Carr sitting there. You had Derek Carr as your go-to backup plan, as your plan B that you could turn to and say, all right, we lost out on the shiny toy, but we can, without giving up any assets, without divulging into a very strong cap hit, we can get a very quality quarterback in this league that we can build around and keep our draft picks and continue to ascend toward, hopefully this year, getting out of the playoff drought that we've been in. Now it's become Aaron Rodgers or bust. Now it's become get the shiny new toy, or Joe Douglas is going to have egg on his face. Woody Johnson, who you know is playing a big role in this, is going to have egg on his face. Because if you're the New York Jets, in no way, shape, or form can you go into next year with Zach Wilson as your quarterback. That cannot happen. Especially with how you had the gall to raise season ticket prices for people like myself after that collapse that you had at the end of last season. You have to get this guy. Because you look at the other options. People bring up Ryan Tannehill. Well, that doesn't excite anyone. That doesn't have anyone doing cartwheels. You might as well go sign Jimmy G if you're going to do that. And the Titans have already said they're not going to trade Ryan Tannehill, despite how much the media likes to bring that up as an option. You look at Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo, as I talked about before, very good quarterback, quality quarterback, has shown with the right pieces around him, you can win games with this guy as your quarterback. The problem with Jimmy Garoppolo is he always gets hurt. He gets off to good starts, and then somewhere, whether it be end of October, late November, somewhere along the line, Jimmy Garoppolo always gets hurt. And you can't take that risk if you're the Jets, because he gets hurt, then you're right back to Zach Wilson. You can't go down the Sam Darnold train again. Baker Mayfield, And the other options, this is where you look at giving up assets as well. The other options, it's going to be interesting to see what goes on with them between now and tomorrow the franchise tag deadline for both Lamar Jackson and Daniel Jones. In the case of Lamar Jackson, you're now starting to see whispers. You're starting to hear leaks in that organization that the Ravens may be leaning toward placing the non-exclusive franchise tag on Lamar, because they just talked about it last week, cannot get a deal done with this guy. He wants more guaranteed money than what Deshaun Watson got last year. And the Ravens are only willing to guarantee about $130 million of a 5-year contract for him. And the fact that they have made no inroads, they have gotten no closer, and this team is willing to put him out there, expose him to the rest of the league, where, as you know, all it takes is one owner. It takes one crazy owner to throw an insane deal at someone for the whole thing to blow up. I mean, the Ravens are playing quite a game of chicken here as well, because it's essentially a start over move if he leaves as a free agent. If he signs a big mega deal with it 90 to 100% guaranteed money, and all they get back is 2 first-round picks, because you look at the crop of quarterbacks that are going to be available in this year's draft. No, people like them. People look at them and say they could be starters, but you don't have that game-changing quarterback. People will bring up, Bryce Young's size issue. People will bring up C.J. Stroud and some of the limitations he has, or how raw Anthony Richardson out of Florida is, or Will Levis not playing necessarily the strongest competition in the world, not coming from a legit powerhouse of the SEC. The Ravens would essentially be starting over here, because they would be willing, placing the exclusive tag on that, the non-exclusive tag on Lamar, would be them admitting that they're ready to move on, because we talked about it a couple weeks ago, that there are so many teams that are desperate for a quarterback that someone would make him that kind of offer, especially someone like the Atlanta Falcons, who we know were deep in the negotiations to trade for Deshaun Watson last year and lost out to Cleveland on him. They might be that team that's willing to give Lamar Jackson a fully guaranteed contract, especially with the fact that they still have the likes of Kyle Pitts and Drake London on rookie deals. And the other option that's going to be out there, possibly on the non-exclusive tag, is Daniel Jones, because the Giants are not going to want to place a fully guaranteed $45 million on this guy. It would cripple them when it comes to potentially going and signing other free agents. And like I mentioned with Lamar, you figure there's a kooky ownership out there that would be willing to throw at him that insane reported request from his representation of somehow getting $45 million a year. I mean, listen, I like Daniel Jones. Thought he really improved. Seems like a good kid. But $45 million a year for a guy that had 22 combined touchdowns last year between the ground and the air. Please. I mean, he would have to be matching that touchdown for $1 million in order for it to truly be worth it. And I don't know if the Jets, knowing how Joe Douglas is and how wrapped up he is in his first-round picks, would be willing to give up first-round picks for anyone other than Aaron Rodgers, anyone other than that shiny toy that Jets ownership, Jets front office, and clearly a lot of this fan base is falling all over themselves for. And, that's why the Jets, they've been backed into a corner here. They have been backed into a situation that you hoped that they wouldn't be in, where it's Rodgers or bust here. While these other quarterbacks are good, this is another thing you got to factor in here when it comes to these non-exclusive tagged quarterbacks. You really think the Jets, knowing how Woody Johnson operates, is going to want them giving up 2 first-round picks to the New York Giants? Please. That I can never see happening. So it's become a Aaron Rodgers or bust situation here. And we're sitting here waiting for this guy to make a decision. A guy who, let's face it, I get it, he's not the most likable person in the world. But as far as I know, he's never done anything illegal off the field. When he plays or commits to playing, he actually gives it his all. He's not wishy-washy in the middle of a season and trying to come up with reasons not to play in a game. And yeah, you're going to have to deal with the possible potential of him missing OTAs, but maybe in a fresh start, maybe with a new team, gives this guy extra motivation. You've seen him talk nonstop about how much he likes the Jets' weapons on his appearances on the Pat McAfee show. B, we know how disrespected he felt by the Packers drafting Jordan Love a couple of years ago. Maybe a fresh start in a new place has him looking at it and saying, all right, I'll show you guys. I'll show you what you're missing out on. And him joining the Jets, think about it. It's a sign to players around the league because we know the Jets have weapons. Their problem last year was at the quarterback position with Zach Wilson taking steps back, Mike White being injured, and Joe Flacco just being the equivalent of the chair that I'm sitting in right now. They need a game changer at quarterback because they have the young talent around them ready to win. You can't waste this window with this young talent. And whatever window they have, you hope that they do this with a quarterback like an Aaron Rodgers. That's the only way you're going to make headway in this AFC right now. When you look around and see Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Herbert. We'll see if Lamar Jackson is still part of this next year. If Deshaun Watson bounces back to pre-suspension form. The Jets have a chance here to make headways. Something that has not been frequent with the history of their franchise. But it's the waiting game that has you scared to death. It's the waiting game that has you concerned, especially with the fact that retirement is a real option here. And when you hear that, it just leaves you in a position where, all right, we don't have Derek Carr to fall back on anymore. What the hell are we going to do? Because it's been a long time, way before my lifetime, since the Jets have appeared in a Super Bowl. Hell, it's been a long time since they've been in the playoffs. I wasn't even doing this podcast before they made the playoffs for the final time. I was barely of the legal drinking age. Gas was at an affordable price, and that was 2 presidents ago. So the Jets, people could talk about the weapons they have all they want, but it means nothing unless they get a quarterback and can get over that hurdle that has been blocking them for the last 12 years. All right, a lot to talk about today. Give us some thoughts on the red-hot New York Knicks. Damn, 9 in a row. Got to talk about them, as well as a change that's going to be coming to the way that we watch sports potentially in this country. Give you some thoughts on the Lakers now that they're without LeBron, the Ja Morant saga, even throwing some thoughts on a big move that needs to happen sooner rather than later in the NFL. So a lot to get me through the next, about 45 minutes or so here. Glad you guys could join me this week. So like I tell you each and every single week at this time, sit back, relax, hell, put your feet up on the table if there is one in front of you, and continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
I was mentioning moments ago that we could be on the precipice of seeing a change the way we view sports in this country. And as we see around us, not just in sports, but in all walks of life, the way we view things is constantly changing. 10 years ago, streaming services were nowhere near as big as what they've become. They were only just starting to become a thing. I believe Netflix was the first of them. And since then, we've seen a lot of them added on with Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, the HBO Max, all of these. And along the way, we've seen different outlets amongst them, whether it be with NBC, whether it be with Hulu, whether it be Amazon Prime, them all jump into the sports arena. Especially the biggest one of them all was Amazon Prime last year, buying the rights to Thursday Night Football. And although the games were a lot of duds last year, you figured, all right, this is only just the beginning. What's the next step? We've seen Major League Baseball jump in the mix here with their Friday night package on Apple TV. They also have a Sunday morning thing where once every week they'll have a game that starts at 11 o'clock in the morning, which was kind of a weird thing to see last year on Peacock. Would anyone really jump in that arena? Would any sports franchise go on their own and do something like that? The first of them was Nesson last year, doing that for Red Sox and Bruins games. And while they set a high price at that, at about $30 a month, $330 for an entire year, they also provided a little something with that for their fans, where you would get 2 tickets of your choice to any Red Sox game and any Bruins game. Well, now we're seeing someone in our area do that, with MSG Networks announcing last week that they are launching this coming summer a streaming service for fans to watch the Knicks, Rangers, Devils, Islanders, and even the few Sabre games that they broadcast. Now, what people need to understand here is this does not mean that the Knicks, Rangers, Devils, Islanders, and Sabres and MSG in total is not going to be, is no longer going to be available for the cable providers. No, this is the traditional cable providers, Cablevision, Verizon, all of these in this area are still going to have MSG. This is for those who cut the cord and are exclusively with streaming services, whether you're on YouTube TV or some other provider where you stream all of your television watching. This is for those to just bypass that system and instead order MSG as a standalone product. And it will launch this summer, be available for fans who live in regions where MSG channels are available on cable TV. The MSG Plus will be available for anyone who's for free for anyone who's already paying a subscriber of a TV service that has MSG Networks. And the streaming service includes 3 different options: a monthly option for $30, an annual option for $310, or a single game purchase for about $10. And I wonder how many people are going to go for just the single game purchase there, because you have situations where maybe not every Knicks fan is a Ranger fan or a Devil fan or Islander fan. Maybe they're a fan of a team outside of this area where they're already streaming the games on ESPN Plus or some other NHL provider. Or do they go with the monthly option? Because I can't see going for the annual option, because MSG used to have the Knicks, used to have the Mets and Yankees on there, but they haven't had baseball in such a long time. They haven't had anything during the summer months. So essentially, once the Knicks and the hockey team seasons end, what are you watching on MSG? They really have no live programming that anyone would be interested in. That's why you look at it and you think there's got to be either some kind of perk that's attached to this, like getting tickets to a Knicks, Rangers, Islanders, Devils game, or at some point they're going to have to lower the price to this, because $30 a month, that's almost 3 times the price of any of these other platforms that are out there. That seems like a very excessive price for something that fans are only going to be using for 6 to 7 months out of the entire year. So they're going to probably at some point have to adjust their price on that, but it is definitely the beginning of a change here in this area. We'll see if at some point Yes and SMY jump in the mix of things here, because I know they, on their streaming services, will put certain Yankees and Mets spring training games, but they haven't gotten to the point where those games are available on their apps as well as on their cable provider. So this is definitely going to be a testing for not just the sports channels in this area, but for all of the teams across this country. They're going to see how this works out and whether this is an arena that they decide to jump into at some point here. Now, if you're a Knicks fan and this was going on now, you'd probably say, oh, it's well worth the price to spend on if you're not a cable customer. Because right now, ladies and gentlemen, your New York Knicks are on fire. They are, with the Bucks' 16-game winning streak ending over the weekend. The New York Knicks are the hottest team in the NBA. The New York Knicks, give them and their coaching staff, their players, give them a lot of credit for this run that they have been on as of late. Because you look at this team, I talked about them last week, how they had an important week coming up here with playing the Celtics twice, a game against the Brooklyn Nets, a game down in Miami against the Heat. They went out there and took care of business this past week and extended their winning streak to 9 in a row, including 2 wins over the Boston Celtics, a team that they've now defeated 3 times this season, has some people starting to question the Celtics a little bit when you consider they were able to frustrate Tatum last Monday to the point where he's arguing with referees and getting himself ejected from the game. They're coming out to hot starts in these games against the Celtics and the Nets, including being up by about 35 against the Nets in the first half, though they are doing this against this Nets team. Weren't able to do it against the Durant and Irving Nets. But all the way around, you look at this Knicks team. I was complaining earlier on about them having such a short rotation, the fact that they were playing a 9-guy rotation. And my biggest issue with that is that you were playing the starters 35 to 40 minutes a night, and the 4 guys you were having come off the bench were playing all of 10 to 12 minutes. You weren't having that reserve that was coming in, taking a big chunk and trying to ease the workload a little bit for any of these starters. I was worried about them getting gassed as we go down the stretch of things here, where you're seeing guys off that bench step up and get more trust from Tom Thibodeau. I mean, of course, with the trade of Josh Hart, he was going to get a lot of playing time here. And even late in some of these games, he's taking some of the minutes that would normally be dedicated to R.J. Barrett, and he's coming out there and having a great impact on the defensive end for the Knicks. And when was the last time that you were talking about the Knicks and defensive impact? You look at quickly and the fact that he's become such a fan favorite, become just an energizer bunny off the bench for them, including last night. You have to give them a lot of credit for the win up in Boston, because they had won 8 in a row going into it. Could have clearly been one of those let's mail it in kind of performances. The end of a road trip here before coming back to the Garden could have easily been one of those, especially with the Celtics coming off of blowing a 28-point lead against the Brooklyn Nets on Friday night. Could have been one of those, kind of demoralizing performances for the Knicks, or lack of energy kind of performances, knowing that they were without Brunson, knowing what the Celtics had just been through in their previous game. And Emmanuel quickly came out there, and I think his energy, more so than anything else, carried this Knicks team over the finish line, because he played 55 minutes last night, could have easily played north of 60 with how much energy, how much passion, excitement that he played with last night. And nothing seemed to get this team down, even with Tatum bouncing back, having 40 against them after struggling last Monday at the Garden. Having Brown back out there, the fact that you got Al Horford making big shots late in regulation and in overtime, forcing multiple overtimes here, just wasn't able to have that magic at the final couple of seconds of the second OT. But between quickly stepping in and having the game of his career for Brunson, who was out with injury, with Barrett and Randall, especially Randall playing smart basketball. I mean, you figure that, Knicks fans always worry with this guy that, he has one big moment like he did on Friday night with that crazy three-pointer at the end. I mean, that was the mix of the good and bad of Julius Randle, with how he looked to be too aggressive on the play, almost lost the ball on 2 separate occasions, and just chucks up an off-balance three-pointer. And for that to go in and get the double bang by Mike Breen, he stayed very mature last night, wasn't forcing anything, wasn't trying to be Superman, wasn't trying to think that all of a sudden he became LeBron James. And this Knicks team, if you're a Knicks fan, you've got to be jumping for joy. You got to be doing cartwheels watching this right now, because before this streak, they were sitting there in a play-in spot. Right now, we sit here and they would be the 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. They're only a game back of Cleveland for the 4 spot. And if you're the Knicks, if you're the Knicks, you're saying, hey, why not us? Why can't we have some fun here? Why can't we do something wacky, and have a deep postseason run? But you're also looking at it and saying, how can we get past Cleveland so we can get home court advantage for a first round series against them? As well as, if you're the Stephen A. Smiths of the world, you're probably hoping that the Knicks somehow can get up to 3 so that they can avoid Cleveland in the first round and not have to go up against Donovan Mitchell. But at this point, you're saying Donovan who? Because Jalen Brunson, many people thought last year that, maybe you spent too much on him. He's been all of that and more for this team. In fact, he might be getting underpaid with the season that he's had and the fact that he probably should have made the All-Star team. Julius Randle has played great. RJ Barrett, even with having Josh Hart here now and taking some of his late minutes away from him, is still playing well. And this team just has a very good vibe to them right now that if you're a Knicks fan, you're hoping doesn't slow down anytime soon. So a great win for the Knicks, great week for them, bringing some energy to MSG there. They'll be back there tomorrow night against the Hornets before starting a 3-game West Coast road trip. All right, going to continue on with some thoughts on the NBA on the other side, especially with a team that is annoying the crap out of me right now, and a player that really needs to watch himself. Continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
As hot as the Knicks have been, there's one team that hasn't been so hot and needed a win extremely badly last night. And that is, of course, the Los Angeles Clippers, a team that I would say most people out there have been extremely hot on this year, have a big-time belief in. But I haven't been so much so on that team's bandwagon when you consider the lack of consistent availability of both Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. The fact that roster seems like it never can get any continuity. And then when you watch some of these games where they can be as good as anybody in the league for a quarter and then just look like flat out trash for another quarter. Take, for example, in the midst of the recent 5-game losing streak that they had last Thursday night. They're going up against the Golden State Warriors, who were still without Steph Curry at that time. They've got an 11-point lead at halftime and then just completely disappeared in the third quarter. We're talking, they got blitzed, got run over by Golden State, 42-16 in a quarter. We're talking in an NBA game, you only score 16 points in a quarter and give up 42. And then last night, it looked like it was going to be more of the same. They're going up against Memphis. They get steamrolled in that third quarter after playing a good first half. Get steamrolled in the third quarter, 51-30. You're watching these guys like Desmond Bain and Jared Jackson going right past them, and you're looking at these Clippers like this is the team that people think could be a threat, could be somewhat of a contender, could be a top team in the Western Conference. Really? Ty Lue must have really said something to this crew heading into the fourth quarter, because they woke up big time. But this recent stretch that they've been on has once again had me not a believer of this team. I mean, they're sitting here right now. They're currently the 8th spot in the Western Conference. They'd be playing in the play-in game against the Dallas Mavericks in the play-in tournament. And even with the Mavericks' defensive inefficiencies, we've seen what Luka Doncic can do against the Clippers in a playoff scenario. Now, why should I believe in the Clippers? Why should I be all hot and bothered by a team that has shown no consistency whatsoever? And now, speaking of Luka and the crew, was very happy to see what I saw between him and Devin Booker yesterday in the Suns-Mavericks matchup. I've always said that one of my big problems with the NBA is that there's too much of this buddy-buddy system going on here, this whole we're all best friends thing. That's why in his prime, Russell Westbrook was a player that I was a big fan of, because he doesn't give a damn who you are. If you're on the court wearing that other jersey, you're always an enemy of his during the game. So it was good to see a little jawing between Luka and Devin Booker. And hey, that might not be the only rivalry that's gone on there, when you consider Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant didn't say a word to each other, didn't look at each other. This is the first time they've been on a court together since they were each traded away from the Brooklyn Nets. And maybe this is showing that while Kevin was publicly very nice about his stance toward Kyrie, internally, some of the stuff Kyrie Irving was doing really had him pissed off. Only wish he would have done that while he was still here. Only wish he would have been not so passive-aggressive while he was still with the Brooklyn Nets. Now, in the win by the Clippers over the Grizzlies last night, it was the first of what is for now a 2-game suspension for Grizzlies star Ja Morant. It was the first of what they're saying for now is at least 2 games, though their head coach Taylor Jenkins has said there's no timetable for his return, nor should there be. When you consider right now Ja Morant is making headlines for all of the wrong reasons. He should be making headlines for being the best player on one of the top teams in the Western Conference. Well, one of the top teams in the NBA. Not making headlines for off-the-court issues, things he's doing on social media. Or, initially this started last Wednesday with the Washington Post reporting that he was being accused in a police report of beating up a 17-year-old boy and pointing a gun at him last year when there was a pickup game at his house. And as of right now, it seems like it was a lot of he said, where it's the old case of there's 2 sides to every story, where Ja was claiming that the kid was being the aggressor, that he was the one threatening to come back and light the entire place up, while the teenager was saying that Ja and his friend sent him to the ground and left a large knot in the side of his head, and he was the one pointing the gun at him. And after this report came out, you saw it in a Grizzlies game last week where Ja Morant is celebrating a Jaren Jackson slam dunk by doing the gunshot taunt on the bench with his teammates, like essentially having no self-awareness whatsoever with the bad public look he's had right now. And then to add on top of that, he goes on Instagram late Friday night into Saturday while he's in a strip club showing off his gun. Now, there's no laws in that area about carrying around a licensed gun in public places, but it's just like this kid has no clue whatsoever about how to handle himself in the right way, especially when you're not just the face of a franchise, but when you take into account, he was the second overall pick in the draft a couple of years ago. He's emerged into being one of the top players in this sport. But then think about it from a personal standpoint when you consider the fact that with his upbringing, he comes from a small town where he was not the most heavily recruited high school player in the world. Hell, we didn't even truly know about this kid until halfway through his 1 year in college. And then he lights the world on fire, has a great run that takes his team to the NCAA tournament, turns that into being the second overall pick in the NBA draft. Probably should have been the first when you consider the injuries to Zion Williamson. And all along the way, he has seemed like a likable kid. He seemed like a someone that you really could be proud of. And now he's doing this stupid nonsense that could put everything he's built in jeopardy. When you consider guys like this who were so little recruited and turned themselves into stars coming out of a small town, he's not just representing himself. He's representing his parents. He's representing all of his family. You know that he's probably got guys that are in his inner circle that, fair or unfair to say this, he financially covers them. So he's not just putting himself at jeopardy here. He's putting everybody he represents at jeopardy. Everyone that is within his inner circle that he has a responsibility to. And I've seen a lot of people point the onus at his father, T. Morant. And listen, that's an easy target to take when you consider how public T. Morant has been in the last year, whether it be him sitting courtside at playoff games next to Usher, or the verbal spout that really turned into nothing, and they settled things pretty quickly with him and Shannon Sharp at a Laker game about a month ago. Yes, a parent's responsibility in some way with their children is to teach them the right way of doing things. Remember, T. Morant passed up the chance at going pro, realizing that he had a bigger responsibility to his family. His wife was just pregnant with Ja at the time, so he had to take a job with guaranteed money over the risk of going and playing professional, whether it be in the NBA or overseas. And while maybe there's a little bit of him being too much of Ja's best friend, at the same time, Ja Morant is 23 years old. He's old enough to drink. He's old enough to vote. He's old enough to have a driver's license. He's old enough to have a gun, hopefully with a license. It's time for him to grow the hell up. It's time for him to wake up and realize that he's been provided with this amazing gift that can set up his family, his friends, and even his future children and grandchildren for the rest of their lives. But if he keeps doing stupid things like this, that could jeopardize it all. Because think about it. He's so willing to pull out his gun and point it in an Instagram video. Or, be so willing to carry his gun around in general. What if, in a situation, he gets in another altercation with a police officer like he was last summer, and he's doing like a taunt, like reaching for his belt. A police officer may have a quick trigger and pull his gun and shoot him right then and there, and then it's all over. Then everything he's built is gone. So you hope that this suspension, however long it lasts, and it's not officially a suspension yet, they're just saying he's away from the team, but you got to figure with these actions, with all these accusations, that the league is going to come down with something on him, almost even if it's just a slap on the wrist as a wake-up call. You hope that he does get this wake-up call. You hope, you pray that this is that moment where he realizes, damn, I got to stop doing stupid things here because I could destroy it all.
I'll be back.
I was mentioning earlier, when it comes to Daniel Jones and Lamar Jackson, all it takes is one crazy owner out there, one kooky owner to make an offer to one of these quarterbacks that A, they can't refuse, and B, is even too rich for the team that they're coming from to potentially match that as a non-exclusive franchise tag player. And amongst those teams, normally you would put in the mix the likes of the Washington Commanders because they have that kooky owner. But for God's sakes, can we get Daniel Snyder the hell out of here? Can he get out of the league fast enough? Because I don't know how many more times that the league can just bypass how much of an embarrassment he is, how much a joke he is to have part of their ownership group. When you consider all that is surrounding him, whether it be last week, him and his legal team actually had the gall to request from the other NFL owners and the league to be indemnified against any future legal and liability costs if he moves forward with selling the Commanders. He's reportedly threatening to sue the NFL and its owners if his request of indemnification isn't granted. And now it's led the rest of the owners to considering simply voting him out, when you consider he's already had workplace harassment issues against him, leading to him stepping away and putting his wife in charge of the team. You had the embarrassing emails that had popped up between himself, Bruce Allen, and company, that they were in the mix with the John Gruden situation. They're now being investigated for bank fraud, where Snyder allegedly took $55 million in loan through the franchise without informing its minority owners or receiving their approval. And this is a critical fact because it came 15 months before buying out his minority partners who had a combined 40% share of the franchise. I mean, just time and time again, this guy does things that are a flat-out embarrassment of the league. Remember how much he kicked his feet through the mud when it came to changing the team name and logo. I don't get why the league feels the need to keep this kind of embarrassment around, feels the need to keep this kind of crap show around. Does he have that much dirt over the rest of the owners or Roger Goodell that if he got kicked out and decided to go scorched earth, that it could bring the entire situation down, that could knock other owners out of the league? Because remember, up until recently, Jerry Jones was one of his biggest supporters. And recently, he's even started to sway on Snyder. Does Snyder have something on him? Does he have... The only owner that he possibly could not have something on is Jim Irsay, because it feels like we know everything that it involves him, and Jim Irsay has been the most public when it comes to speaking out against Daniel Snyder. But I don't get why the league doesn't just kick him out. I mean, it would be the first time that an owner is voted out of the NFL, and maybe they're worried about the legal ramifications of it. But by every account, if they follow the process where it's, the other owners have a vote, then they give him the opportunity to say why he doesn't think he should be kicked out, and they're willing to make everything public, it doesn't sound like Snyder fighting it would be able to stand up in a court of law. If they follow their NFL bylaws and have all their ducks in a row, have everything set as far as following the process to get there. Just get rid of this guy. Get him out of this sport, because you can get another owner in there that won't embarrass them. And it's not like, because they're a salary cap sport, it's not like you're going to have to worry about someone coming in and being the next Steve Cohen or the next George Steinbrenner or something like that. You'll have an owner that is going to play by the rules, and an owner that is not as much of a black eye for this sport as Daniel Snyder has been. Now, one of the bright spots in the NBA finally reemerged after a month yesterday, and that was Steph Curry returning to the Golden State Warriors after missing a month of action. And surprisingly, the Warriors didn't miss much of a beat without him. And that's what you hope for if you're a team, that you can just kind of coast along, tread water without your star player. And they were able to do better than that, go 11-4 or 7-4, without Steph Curry in the lineup, and even improved in the Western Conference standings from getting out of the play-in at the 8th spot to getting all the way up to 5th in the Western Conference since February 4th. Now, the winning streak that they had been on ended yesterday against the Los Angeles Lakers, and there were two important things that I took away from that game. One, getting Steph Curry back in the lineup, of course, and getting him back in the flow of things. And didn't care how much he scored, didn't care how many baskets he made. Anybody missing a month of action, there's going to be a period of time where you've got to work your way back into it. And now at least you can get him through that, and hopefully within the next couple of weeks, it's same old Steph Curry, as you've got a month left to go here in the rest of the NBA regular season, especially when you look at the West, and a good week or a bad week here or there could either significantly improve you in the standings or significantly drop you. And you have right now between 4 and 11 in the standings, only a 5-game difference there. The Warriors legitimately could get up to the 3 seed if they play to the level that we know they can be for the rest of the season. But the other thing that I took away from that game, and the more important thing that was taken away from that game, was a win for the Lakers. Because the Lakers, talked about them a lot last week, that they're in a position right now where they can't go through any dry spells. They have backed themselves into such a corner that they have to go on a run in these last 17 games that they have remaining here just to get in the playoffs. Now, I still think that their goal of getting to the 6th spot in the West might be a little bit ambitious, especially now that they're going to be doing so without LeBron James for at least another 2 weeks. He's going to miss 3 weeks total due to the right foot injury that he sustained in the game against the Mavericks 8 days ago. But they need to be able to hold water without LeBron James and probably even do more than that. That's why these next 2 weeks have got to be the best 2 weeks of Anthony Davis's career. Cannot be any maintenance games. Cannot be anything where Anthony just comes up playing average. He's got to be what we expect him to be, amongst the most dominant players in this sport for the Lakers to have a chance, because they have 17 games left to go. 10 of them are at home. One of those 7 road games is against the Clippers. You look at their remaining schedule, as far as teams they're battling for the play-in, they have 1 against the Pelicans, 1 against the Mavs, 1 against the Thunder, 1 against the T-Wolves, 2 against the Jazz, 1 against the Clippers, but none against the Portland Trailblazers. And the Lakers, right now, they're a half game back of the Pelicans for 10th, but they're also 2 games back of the Mavericks for 6th, and 3 games back of the Warriors for 5th. Like I said, it's very fluent out there in the Western Conference. But they've lost all wiggle room. They've lost any space for even the slightest slip-up in their season. That's why in these last 17 games, if they want to get to what they hope, and that's avoiding the play-in, in all likelihood, they're probably going to have to win at least 13 of these last 7 games. And while you may think, oh, that's not unreasonable, who knows who's going to slip up, who's going to improve in the West. There's a lot of variables in the mix here, like what is Kawhi Leonard's availability? Is Zion Williamson going to play at all? Are the Jazz in complete tank mode? What are the Mavericks going to be? Are they going to ever play any defense and have a third guy step up to support Luka and Kyrie? So there's a lot of variables here when it comes to the Lakers' quest to not just making the playoffs, but avoiding the play-in. And it's going to be amongst the biggest things to watch across this month of March, whether it be their chase for making the playoffs, the Knicks hot streak, the beginning of March Madness, because we got the conference tournaments taking place this week with Selection Sunday coming up next week. Spring training in baseball as people are battling for positions and we see teams continue to battle this pitch clock rule, as well as the NFL quarterback carousel and whatever happens with the Jets, Lamar Jackson, Daniel Jones. A lot of things going on, a lot of things to watch this month here, people. And this is why we love sports. This is why we flip on the TV each and every single week, because you never know what you're going to see. And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 for Monday, March 6th, 2023. Everyone, please have a great night. Have a great week. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Have fun with whatever you're doing. And I'll talk to you again same time next week. Peace.
We have to go. Good night, everybody. I have had enough of you. Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will you?
I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, I don't want to smell you. Now leave.
I'll be back.